Yeah.
All right. I'm just gonna start it from the top. All right. Welcome back
Yeah.
to WKNC 88.1 FM HG1 Raleigh. I'm Hermajesty live during World College Radio Day, and today I'm with Melbourne indie rocker Lalic. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. How about you introduce yourself?
Hey, yeah. My name is Mladen. Uh, I've been making art and music in Melbourne for the last maybe like 10 years, and I'm originally from Serbia, and my pronouns are they, them.
Awesome. When did you immigrate? Were you born
Uh,
in Serbia?
yeah, I was born in Serbia and came here in 1998.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how old are you? So you mostly grew up in Australia?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Can you explain kind of Lalic for listeners who haven't heard the project yet?
Sure. It's a pretty, I guess, chaotic project in the sense. Like, I think it's just been kind of like my whims over the last, I don't know when it's been something I've been doing since I was like like I think the first Lalic recordings I made was when I was like 12, 13, and then I just uh so it's kind of like every album is quite different and they all feel pretty personal, like I think it's hard to describe them all as one because I think they're all so different, and I get bored very quickly with like something. I just kind of move on, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely changed a lot as like the project has gone on with time, and because of that, like, do you do you still like using, I guess, the term Lalic, just or the I mean the project name Lalic, just in the sense that like you've changed so much in that time.
Hmm. I guess like one of the things I really like about it is that it kind of, I guess, I don't know, I guess like that's kind of like what life is, right? Like life changes
Hmm.
all
Yeah.
the time, and I feel like there has been times where I've made really dramatic turns in like my sound or my ideology or whatever, and I've been tempted to like kind of take up another name, but I think I really like the consistency of the inconsistency. You know what I mean? Like I like,
Yeah, like it's representative of you, and like no, like
yeah,
nobody's static, like it's showing your journey.
yeah, totally. And I think that even in that sense, it kind of like it makes it like less about me, and for me anyway, because it feels like I'm like at the whims of like greater things or something. Not like greater, but I mean like as in like I feel like I just like follow those whims to change rather than kind of like crafting something more concise. I
Yeah,
don't
I mean,
know
I'd
if
say
that
it's more like it's more of you as a musical output than it is like a a band, like a concrete
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
how, yeah, it's more individualistic than it is like, oh, I expect this band to sound like this with each consecutive
yeah,
record or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah. So you obviously, I mean, you're not that old. You're a product of the internet, I would assume, age
I'm what,
wise.
sorry?
A product of the internet, like age wise, like growing
Oh
up.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So it like, did you grow up more like making and posting music online, or like were you more of like cutting your teeth on playing live shows, or how was your kind of like
Yeah.
growing up with it since you've
That's
been
such
doing
a
it for so
that's such
long?
a great question. I the very first thing was making music like on my computer. I did that for so many years before I even got close to anything like a live show. And I think that like bringing up the internet is really important because it's like I was doing that in that like 2006 to 2009 is like when I first started making music, and that was like a real like SoundCloud was just kind of just popping off for the first time, and there was a lot of like a bedroom indie music, like a
Yeah,
Panda
I think
Bear
I
and like,
found your MySpace when I was
oh,
researching.
true. That's crazy. Yeah, there's heaps of those weird like profiles that I don't know how to log into anymore out there, kind of thing. But it was definitely like a big spirit. Like I feel like I was like 13, 14, 15, like around the same time that there was this kind of like greater energy of just make random in your room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of
Um,
like what has invoked a lot of your stylistic changes? Is it just kind of like you're changing your influences, like what you're listening to? or like almost
Mm,
because like it felt like I do not deserve this catharsis was like a very personal like output of stuff. So like
yeah,
what kind of changes how much of kind of all of that goes into a record for you?
yeah. Well, I think part of that is that I'm kind of always working on between 3 and 5 different records, and like some of them like never actually get released, and because of that, it kind of like I'll usually like gravitate to the path of least resistance. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
whatever
I'll
is
like,
coming more naturally to you.
yeah, totally. And I think that also like that kind of like ebb and flow kind of pattern that the albums seem to have. It's also kind of like if I do an album and I feel like I've really like achieved something that I wanted to achieve with that album, I kind of like the last thing I want to do next is something really similar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it just kind of like naturally ends up happening like that. But then also it's like, depends on what's going on in my life. And like I said, like it's just very responsive to my environment.
Yeah. With COVID and everything, I know it's been a little different on the Aussie side as far as sort of lockdowns and
Yeah.
everything. But was there anything that you, or I guess it's a little different because you are like making stuff in your bedroom a lot, sort of like, or that's how
Yeah.
it started. But were there any projects that you meant to record or like you had ready that kind of like axed because of COVID? Or like were there any of those kind of projects that like going into it you were like, yeah, like this is awesome, but then coming out of it you were like, oh, this doesn't really represent me or where I'm at anymore?
Yeah. Absolutely. I had I took almost a year where I didn't touch any music, like and it's the longest I've ever done. But like before that, I don't think I'd even gone a week without working on something. But like when COVID first started, when the lockdowns and the pandemic first started happening, it kind of really coincided with like what I was working at the time, in the sense that I don't know, it just kind of happened at this crossroads where it was like all this stuff was going on in the world, and I had things I wanted to say about it, and then I had this album that I was trying to write at that exact moment. You know what I mean? That like kind of musically a thing, and that was like postmodern gothic. And then I finished that, and I just, I think there was a moment where I was like, all right, next album, like I'm going to release 4 albums this year, kind of thing. And then I just, I think the whole lockdown and the change and everything was like I feel like I haven't stopped in 10 years, over 10 years, like that I've been going nonstop. And there was just this moment where I just remembered, what happened? All right, sorry, this is kind of a long-winded story. You can cut me off if I'm talking too much.
No, no, no,
But
no.
like,
We have like
yeah.
another hour. You're fine.
Well, okay, so I was working on this album that was going to be a follow-up to Postmodern Gothic, and I was really happy with it. And then I lost this album, right? It was like pretty much finished. I lost it on this hard drive, and there was this kind of like this moment where I was just like, this is my out. This is like my like the like I'm Keanu Reeves on the bus, and it's like just enough, slowed down enough for me to hop on out. You know what I mean, kind of thing. And when I did that, it was just like such a relief, like just to relax and kind of not have that. I don't know. I went through a lot within myself, kind of thing. And then when I found the album, like it turns out I hadn't even deleted it. 3 months later, it was kind of like I'm out now, like like I'm not getting pulled back in. I kind of just like took a break. So yeah, so that's kind of my COVID music experience, I guess. But it's also a very personal experience, like everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so with a bedroom project and kind of the way you record your stuff, how did you assemble a live version of Lalic for touring?
Yeah, so we had a live band pretty between 2014, and then our last show was 2017 or 2018, I think. And that was, I guess it was like being surrounded by friends that were really like hyping me up, and like the Andy, Liam, and Lucas, who played in the live band that we assembled, they were all people that kind of approached me and were really supportive of my music. And then I think part of that is like I started writing music like for that kind of, you know, like for that kind of music. I think
Yeah,
I got
like
really
you were doing it for like a 4-piece.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think I just like kind of gotten burnt out on like I was making a lot of like experimental electronica and, you know, like abstract music and stuff like that. And then it was just like when the band got together, it was just like such a relief to like write. It was like the first time I could write songs like what I thought that I would be making as a musician when I was like 12 and I wanted to be in a band. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and then you kind of go down all these roads and then you get to a point in your life where you're like, oh, I can like try and tie down that like, you know what I mean? That vision
Yeah.
that I once maybe had. Yeah.
That's awesome. Did you ever record? Because you said you were writing differently. Did the like kind of the 4-piece of version of Lalic, did you record stuff with them?
Yeah, we made I guess they were sparsely on the first album, Broken Foot Rabbit Hole, in bits.
Okay.
Like that was like as we were forming the band and I was already recording that at home, and then I get some of them in to play certain songs and stuff. And then the whole the third album, I guess, Portal, that was all recorded and written with the band. And Stu McKenzie recorded that at my house. And then you know, like
That's awesome.
that was the thing. It was like meant to be like we're gonna record this live and it's gonna sound really awesome. And then we recorded it live, and then I took like 2-3 years in my bedroom, like and adding stuff to it, you know, and like
Yeah.
convoluting it and turning it back into a bedroom release after all that time. So yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of Stu, like tangentially, how was touring the States with the Murlocs?
It was amazing. I feel like it was amazing. It was one of the best things I've ever done. I feel like at the time, some things were, I feel like I took some of it for granted, you know, like I thinking back now, like some of the times I'd be like, oh, I'm so tired and like, oh, I'm so hungry and like I don't know, just like that. And I'm like, oh, like I'd kill to be back, you know, like out there again. Like it was so much fun. But it was also like, yeah, during a really chaotic time in my life, like, I don't know, I feel just like so much chaos has gone on in the last like 7 years. And yeah.
Does
It was a great
Ambrose
time.
consume as much shrimp as like he said to?
Shrimp.
Shrimp, like prawn?
I mean, that's I haven't heard that. I've never heard that before.
I don't know. It's just something I've heard about online.
That's so funny.
Uh,
Yeah.
you said before that you want music to be more accessible. Like how is obviously like you were able to make stuff in your bedroom and like output it to like SoundCloud and MySpace and Bandcamp and stuff. How do you how has it changed? How has the change in that impacted you? Kind of the democratization of releasing music, and how do you think it can improve?
Yeah. I think about that a lot. Like I think that we're in kind of like a weird spot, but that also like this transition that's maybe been happening for the last 10 years is kind of like starting to coalesce into something solid, you know? Like I mean, I think that what we went through was like digital media in general's like technological challenges, right? With becoming like so readily available that like the industry had to change a lot, obviously, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, I think that the entire industry was kind of forced into this position, I guess, economically of like having to draw like a drop of juice from a stone, you know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah,
for that reason, it's like, I think that while things have gotten like kind of more democratic, it's also more authoritarian than ever, I guess, in how the music industry is run. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's
like
like,
how Spotify picks like in their playlist like
yeah,
who makes it essentially.
exactly. Yeah. And the way that Spotify picks who makes it is by, you know, the companies that they work with to give them brands. And the way that those companies get bands is that the bands have to pay these companies, you know what I mean? And so it's
Yeah.
like this setup thing where essentially now, like no one can afford to really take a risk. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, it feels a lot like a mafia to me, really, you know, like,
Yeah.
and again, it's like, I'm critical of it, but I also understand like, from a business point of view, like there's just, you know what I mean? Like I I guess they kind of had to do that, but I think it has cut out a lot of potential for that middle layer. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's made it really stark, like you're making it or you're not making it. I don't think that was quite as contrasted once as it is now, you know?
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely where a lot of, especially like with physical like media sales declining, or I guess they're kind of technically on an upswing again since like
Yeah.
the
It's
early
like a totally
2010s.
different monetization
Yeah, like you
system. You know what I
can,
mean? Like that had to shift.
yeah, you can like seem big, but like streams aren't doing that much financially for
Yeah.
bands.
Yeah. Which is like, you know, yeah.
Yeah. You said in the past the Melbourne scene has become better about representation, tokenism, and sort of transphobia in general. And you mentioned that in 2016, those were kind of some of the largest
Yeah.
obstacles facing queer artists in the scene then. How has it changed in the past 5 years?
Yeah. I think we've gone through a lot of cycles, you know, and I think that it's going to be really interesting, like how things play out after the pandemic and everything. But I think that in general, like on one hand, like I think that a lot of these things that were kind of like more political issues back then are way more normalized now. You know what I mean? Like I don't like find myself like fighting for pronouns, and you know what I mean? Like I'm sure it happens, but it's not like as a buzzy thing. But at the same time,
it's
I
like
think
a single correction instead of like a through the night kind of deal.
yeah, or like somewhat, you know, like who's against and who's on what team. And I don't know, it was, you know, it was really messy and stuff. But also I feel like my problem with it at the moment is that it's kind of like, I feel like what was happening in 2016 and since then, it's been kind of like, it was like this confusion of like, okay, there's all these like new stuff that people are getting used to and whatever. And then it was kind of like everyone like quickly tried to fill out as quickly as possible. Like, okay, what's the ideology that we're all going to agree to together? You know what I mean? And then kind of like try and lock that down so that we can have a transferable record of what is right and wrong or whatever. But the problem with that is that it's kind of like these things need to keep evolving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I feel like I'm seeing a lot of stale kind of like political rhetoric or like coming from institutions that are participating in their rhetoric but not instigating any of the change, or like, you know, or just like the conversations have kind of grinded a bit to a halt. And it kind of makes me feel like people just wanted wanted peace more than they wanted truth, I guess.
No, that's a really good way to put it. Kind of, as like someone that's been in the scene for a long time, do you see do you see the scene becoming more accepting as sort of like new kids are coming into it?
I totally, absolutely, you know. And like there's just like, you just see like yeah, like I'm critical, but it's like you see so much stuff that, you know, like 5 years ago, if you told me that that was just commonplace, would it, you know what I mean? It's amazing to see, and totally like, you know, and yeah, I'm already feeling like politically challenged by younger people, you know, and I'm only 28, so like that's a really good, you know, sign as well.
No, yeah, there's a good slaughter beach dog line that's like, I feel old admitting counterculture makes me tired. And it's just like kind of being like, oh wait, like these kids are, yeah, they're hitting it harder than I was.
Yeah, totally.
So kind of moving off of the slightly heavier topics, what's kind of the current vision for Lalic, and do you have anything in the pipeline currently? Like, do you ever maybe plan on releasing that album that you found that got deleted, or what does it look like moving forward?
I actually just finished a new album about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, awesome.
So it's kind of really cool timing. And actually I was just listening over it before. I'll show you. Oh, there it is in my iTunes. Well, world preview, first peek.
World preview, Twilight Princess.
But so I have this album called Twilight Princess that I've been working on and off for years, and it's been a really hard project to work on because it was like really personal, and I kind of like feels very ultimate. Like I feel like very like this is probably the best thing I've ever done, which is, you know, what I really kind of want to feel every time I release something. But I just feel really strong about this, and it's been a long time coming, and and it kind of came as a surprise, I think, because like I'd spent so long that I kind of checked out, and then, you know, like a few weeks ago I moved house and I set up a studio in the back, and then I just like started cooking, and I was just like in there every day, like all days, and it was just amazing, you know. So I'm going to say, and this is also the first time that I finished an album before I've announced its release date. Like every other time I've been like, you know, October 24th or whatever, and then October 23 I'm like mastering, you know what I mean, like I'm uploading new versions kind of thing. Whereas this time it's like I haven't even told anyone and I've got the whole thing finished, so that'll be kind of cool. But I might finish that other album. We'll see how we go. I really want to get into TV, to be honest. I want to make TV. That's what I've been thinking about. Like, this is a random point to put across. I know that's a bit of a side thing, but it's like,
no, it's okay.
I feel like
I want to hear about where you want to go creatively.
Yeah. Well, I just feel like that's a real avenue, because I think part of it was being in lockdown and watching so much TV, you know, and kind of like starting to relate to that as a medium. And then, so last year when I took my break from music, me and some friends kind of worked on a show for a little while, just like an animation, just like for fun and like kind of like a sitcom vibe. But I just like really want to like, I feel like in music, there's so much like I'm saying something, right? But it's like, because of like poetry and subjectivity, it's like only like say a quarter of that gets across. And then a quarter of that, it's like the rest of it, I'm leaving up to the other person, right? To kind of interpret these messages in relation to whatever they're going through or whatever. But like, I feel like I'd love to move into something a bit more specific, where I kind of we have to like actually say stuff. You know what I mean? Like TV, I guess, like, I don't know. It's like kind of like,
no, yeah, it can definitely be a lot more heavy-handed.
Yeah, totally. And you have to commit more. I think that's what I was like writing scripts all last year, and it was like the closest I've ever come to having a good therapist, you know, like having to actually like tie down what you're saying and why you're saying it, you know. And it's like I would write an episode and then be like, oh my God, like I'm the joke. Like, I can't believe I even, you know what I mean? Kind of thing. Yeah, like, and then scrap it all and learn something about like, so that's kind of what I want to go into. But also as lockdown opens, I want to, you know, there's a bunch of artists in Melbourne that I want to help and support, and, you know, like great artists that should be out there and friends of mine that I really believe in, that I'm going to work on some of their projects with them. And, you know, yeah.
Who are you kind of looking at right now in the Melbourne scene? Like, who are some of those artists?
Well, look, if I gave you a list, it would just be of all my friends, you know, like that's, it's like, there's a lot out there, you know, like, and everyone's really good. Like, I got to say that, like, a lot, you know, I think that what gets beamed out of Melbourne is a tiny fraction, you know what I mean? And kind of like the barriers to getting out of Melbourne are they comb out a lot of really good stuff, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so there's kind of a lot of really good short-lived projects, you know what I mean? Like, and people move on a lot. People do a band for a year and a half or something. But to drop some names, like my best friend Slippy Main is my favorite rapper in the city, and he's amazing. There's Hyena, who does amazing pop stuff. There's Bank Records, a friend of mine's putting out really cool stuff. It's hard to say, like everyone's kind of like in pause. And there's this band Champagne and Quiche. Sorry, I'm just raving about all my friends, but like there's heaps of stuff out there. But also I'm not as in, I don't, there's people that know much more about the scene these days than I do, you know?
Yeah.
I feel old, you know?
No,
like, I feel like good. Like, I feel like I've done a bunch of stuff I like, and now I like that I don't have that hectic fever anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like I can just kind of like relax.
Yeah, that kind of leads into another question I had. Sort of you talking about how Twilight Princess is sort of a penultimate project. Like, at this point, do you feel like, I guess not like a master of your craft, but do you feel like confident in what you're doing? Like, do you feel like there's a lot left to learn, or where do you think you're at, like on your journey as an artist for
Yeah.
music at least?
I think like convincing myself that there wasn't much left to learn was like integral to like harnessing a kind of confidence that I definitely think helped me make some of the stuff I think like Postmortal Gothic for me like felt like I wasn't learning anything, like I was just executing, and that's why I kind of felt like my strongest album when I made it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's like I came into that project, I did it all in 3 months, and it just felt like I know exactly what I'm doing. Whereas in every other album was like, I'm going to learn something, I'm going to take something along the way. But at the same time, it's kind of like getting in my head that I was done is probably what led to that massive drop off. You know what I mean? And that like kind of like existential kind of crisis about it. And I think that like part of that is that when you like feel like you've gotten to the top of a certain mountain, right? And it's like, it's scary and confronting to realize that the only possible next step is to realize that you're actually at the bottom of a new mountain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, I think what I'm gonna go through at some point. Like, but I think that's the thing. It's like there's this reluctance in me, right? That's like, oh yeah, like I don't want to, I don't know, I don't want to go through all of that again. Like, but I know that the truth is that I've definitely got much further to go. You know?
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Kind of going off of that, how do you like, especially with so much time since Postmortal Gothic come out and you finishing up another album, how do you feel like that affects your art? You kind of feeling confident and like I feel like I'm not learning anything compared to when you're kind of scrapping along as you're putting together a project.
Yeah. How's like, what's the difference in vibe, I guess?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that like the scrapping together vibe feels a lot more like kind of like I'm in dialogue with something, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel a lot kind of almost less responsible for those albums because they kind of, I feel like I barely did it. I feel like it was just like what the dice rolled, you know what I mean? In a certain way.
Like you can look back on it and be like, oh, I didn't know how to do that. So
yeah, I felt like I was just like driving this big kind of pushing this blob around, you know what I mean? Kind of thing. And I think that gives it a really special quality, you know? And I think it was like pretty early. Like I had a good friend, Cozzy, who was like, when we met, I was like working on this album and I was like, I'm gonna get it done. And I remember they were just like, just put out what you're doing, you know, show people where you're at. Like, don't wait until you're perfect and then show people, you know, like and then that really like instilled this like ideology of like showing broken work, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And kind of shying away from really polished things because it kind of like felt like oh, look at me, like look how perfect I can do, you know what I mean, kind of thing, as opposed to like, instead of like making like a perfect work, you know, it's like recognizing that like the world's messed up and like people are messed up and I messed up and then the work is also going to be messed up rather than being pristine, you know?
Awesome.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, and kind of going off that, like, just kind of, I'm keep piggybacking everything you say. It's I keep having more questions. You said that one of the songs off of Bed Tapes 2 was a demo when you were 14. Is there other stuff that you would consider like upheaving again that you think would have a place on more projects, or how do you feel about going back again into the sort of archives?
Yeah, I dive into those vaults like I'm, you know, I don't know who's a famous diver. Some like, you know, I dive a lot into those vaults. Like I'm always in and out of that stuff and kind of like reflecting on those kinds of like, I guess, it's like almost like they're like resources, you know, like there's like stuff that, and like half-formed ideas that then like later down the track. There's a lot of tracks that I have on my laptop that like I'll have certain different music friends come around and then I'll play them all stuff. I'm like, oh, this is junk, this is junk, this is junk. And they're like, oh no, I want that. And like, that's really cool, you know, kind of thing. But I thought about doing a Bed Tapes 3, but it's in February. So when I was 13, first ever CD I ever made was called Tapes and Bright Sides. and it was like real like music concrete, weird, abstract, all on Audacity with like lots of reverse like sounds, and but it's in February, it's gonna be 15 years. So I was thinking of maybe like releasing something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it all like it's all there, and it all informs. Like I said, it's all part of that like soup, and it's like
It's
depending
all part
what
of the
direction.
chronology of
Yeah.
who you are as a musician.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever go back and like, would you ever like re-record any of those, or do you just kind of take bits and pieces that you thought were like good and then kind of incorporate them into songs?
Yeah. I think that like, I think to a certain extent, like a lot of it's tapped out, mined out, like used over the last couple of years. But a lot of the time it would be like, maybe something just has like a really simple, beautiful melody in it, and I'll take that. Or I'll use it for like the sonic scape of a certain song, Like sometimes
Yeah.
I'm building a song and I need to fill something out, and I'll just like drag something into the sampler, you know what I mean? Like some old weird thing, and then kind of muffle it out and put it up in one ear, like that kind of stuff. But then a lot of it is like really sacred to me, Like there's a lot of recordings that I made when I was like 14, 15, 16 that it's like, nothing brings me back to that time like those songs. And they bring me right back, Like I remember like the day, I remember like what, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So it's got that kind of like special thing to it that's just for me.
Yeah. Sort of with like, as you're learning when you're recording, will you go back and like re-record, I guess, songs that you just recorded like earlier in the recording process, kind of with what you learned throughout the record, or will you kind of leave them as they were?
No, I definitely leave them as they were. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that is like, a lot of power in that way, I think. Yeah.
Do you think you're going to start playing shows soon, or?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how things go with the lockdowns here and stuff,
Yeah, I know it's really like inconsistent, and it's really like snap, it'll happen.
Yeah, so it's really hard to like plan anything or get your hopes up or anything like that. But it also kind of suits because like I feel like a few years ago I made this decision like that I wasn't going to campaign with gigs anymore. You know what I mean? Like I was going to like do shows, so like once every 6 months maybe do like one show and be like, come see this, because you're not going to see it again and it's going to be really good,
Yeah.
And I think that felt so much better, like I think the last few albums I've pretty much done like 2 shows per album,
Okay.
Yeah, so I like to make a bit more of a thing, but I'd love to tour around. I really want to come back to America, and I really want to, go tour in Europe and stuff like that. So I think that could be in my future. We'll see.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Just a few short questions. What's your favorite Crayola crayon color?
Magenta.
Okay. Do you follow footy at all?
I watched my very first footy match last week, actually.
Oh, you just watched the grand final?
Yeah, because my partner's entire family go for one of the teams. Yeah.
Dogs or demons?
Demons.
Oh, shame. What are some things that we haven't touched on that you may want the listeners and the viewers at home to know?
I mean, first of all, I think that was great. Like, I really liked how you're always ready with another question to keep things going. It's like a really good flow.
Thank you.
Look, just that, look, I don't know. I just, we're all in this together, That's what I want to say. And that we're all kind of like leveling up, we have to. And it's kind of, I'm proud of everyone. That's how I feel, and I hope everyone can stay strong.
Awesome. Where can they find you on social media?
Lalic.bandcamp.com. I've also got a Facebook and Instagram that I never ever use. I pop on there to like, I'll post like once, like, hey, this album came out today, and then I'll go disappear for a year and a half. But there's also some paintings I should be posting on there.
I was gonna ask you about the paintings because those are on Instagram.
Yeah, painting's very a sporadic thing for me. Like it just kind of like hits me like a freight train, and I'll paint for like 2 months, and then I'll give it up for 2 years, and then come back to it. So it's hard to predict when that happens.
And then, how do you? Sorry, this just came back to me. I was definitely trying to wrap up the interview. It just came back to me. But I really enjoyed Danube or the Danube track. Yeah, and so how is like kind of singing in it's in Serbian, right?
Yeah.
The first part of it. How does that kind of differ for you? And like, do you find that almost channels like a different part of you than singing in English?
Well, I think that even just like very like practically, it's like I listen to a lot of Serbian music. I listen to more Serbian music than non-Serbian music, like, and a lot of like 80s and 70s like disco and pop and stuff like that. And so particularly with that song, it was like singing in Serbian. It was like I could draw on all those influences, like the way that they use the phonetics and stuff like that. It was like, yeah, it's all very like choppy and kind of like cool like that. And I definitely want to write more in Serbian. I want to go back there. But yeah, I listen to so much Serbian music. Like there's so much good Yugoslavian music in general. So it was cool to sing in it.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting how you worked with like other Balkan labels and stuff. Yeah. Because you put you put a cassette out with a Slovakian label, right?
Yeah. And I, was really glad to say I've been on some of the compilations before. Because in 2019, just before COVID hit, I was in Serbia for 4 months, and I was planning to go back. And I really liked kind of like trying to be part of something over there as well,
Yeah.
But I have so many amazing fans in Europe, like so many people from different countries that like hit me up when a new album comes out, or ask for lyrics, or email me telling me like how much certain things mean to them. Like it's amazing, like. So I have like heaps of little towns that I want to visit and play in just for that like one person, like.
Yeah.
So thank you.
No, yeah, that's so cool. Finding your stuff was definitely, it was super interesting. I like so much of it. But thank you so much for being with me, Mladen. You're listening to WKNC 80.1 FM H2N Raleigh. I'm Hermajesty. Band is Lalic.
Thank you so much.